Okay, so we're going to have a look at turning our arm post.
Yep.
So the arm post is the bit of the chair that the arm fits onto, and we've got one at the front and the back. So we call the front one the arm post and the back one the crest post, because the crest goes into it as well. Now actually they're slightly different, so make sure you check the PDF. The one that goes into the arm has got a bigger diameter
16
tenon
millimeter,
that goes into the arm, but it's quite short because the arm's like an inch thick, is it? Or maybe a little bit more?
3/4.
Something like that.
Yeah.
We'll look at that when we fit them. Check out the PDF for measurements. Now this one actually that we're doing is the crest post. It's one going into the back, and we have a 2-inch long tenon because it needs to be able to go through the arm and into the crest.
Yes.
And then that's much thinner, so it's like
3/8, 9mm.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I've got a story stick, and I'm just going to start on this end. So this is a dry bit of wood that's been kind of roughed, and I just want to start forming tenon. So we'll just square the end a little bit. Okay, so from there, I want to get it down to size. Now the widest part is going to be here.
Yep.
So I just want to use my story stick. We were going to let the expert do this, but Robin is suffering a little bit with tennis elbow from working too hard. And I can actually just transfer that onto the tool rest there, right?
Yeah.
So the diameter that I want for that is 1 3/8 inches.
Yep.
So I will get my caliper and we'll measure. Oh, it was there already. Okay, always double check, 1 3/8 inches. So we've got a little way to go. It can be handy to just, if you've got a bit of a taper anyway, then you can see where it does actually fit. So if it does fit here, then I know that I need to take that down to that. So if I go onto the skew, great, okay, so I've got my widest point there. Now, what size do I want the top of the tenon to be? 1 inch.
1 inch.
Inch,
Yep.
right, okay, so what's really handy is if you've got a few of these, and actually there's a lot of different ways that you can size these things. I have got 4 or 5 of these, but they're all at the shop. Okay, so we want this bit, so there's miles to go.
Yeah.
So look, that, it wants to be this diameter, but here. And I have put a little mark there from my story stick, so when I lose that, it'll be fine. So I'm just going to taper this down with the skew. So what other ways could we size it? You were telling me people use spanners.
Yeah, if you need something to be a certain size and you've got a spanner of that size, it's very quick to just grab the spanner, put it over the wood at the right place. If it fits on well, it's the size of the spanner.
But weren't you? I thought you were suggesting that some people sharpen.
Yeah, you can do that
spanner.
too. Yeah, you can sharpen the end of your spanner and use it like a parting tool. I wouldn't suggest that to an absolute beginner. It's not an easy way to get something to cut.
Okay, we're getting there.
Yeah.
So it's about there. So when we did the other video, did we do it where we used the tenon cutter to help?
Yes.
Okay. So you guys should know how to do this by now from checking out the other video. But if you don't, then go and check out the other video now. I'm going to round this down so I can look at this curve. This is my highest point, so I want it to be a bulge there. And then it wants to taper down to the top of the tenon. So
it's worth pointing out that the inch that we're talking about here is the dry measurement, because we've got a dry piece of wood.
again, yes, good point. So
1 3/8 if it was green.
okay, so I've got my little tenon block, which helps me check the taper, which is pretty good. It needs to take a little bit more off the end, so it's not steep enough. There we go, really handy.
It's great, aren't they?
Okay, so that should do us. I might do some final adjustments with the little tapered cutter. So next job then is to mark out where we've got our bead. So if that's on the end there. Now the bead is 10 3/4 from the bottom of the tenon
To the top of the bead.
to the top of the bead. That's the important bit. You might mess up the bead. We're going for 1/2 inch
Yeah.
diameter. So, but it's the top that's the important bit. That's what's going to define where the arm is. So I've drawn those on. I may as well score that on. Now I've drawn on it. Let's try and be accurate. Now we've got different diameter for the bead than the widest part, so I want to set that now as well.
1 inch and 1/8.
Someone's nicked my ruler. So, and it's only slightly smaller actually. It's an inch and 1/8, so it's half an inch smaller. No, it's 1/4 of an inch smaller. Just check the PDF and always measure twice. So 1 1/8, so it's a fair way to go actually. So I will maybe go back to the roughing gouge briefly. And I'm going to keep scoring this through. What would have made slightly more sense would have been to have taken it down to the correct diameter before drawing on where the bead's going to be. But we're almost there. When you're kind of in production, having these sequences worked out is really important. But when you're just having a go at making a chair, I wouldn't stress too much. So what we've got to do is just make sure that we're getting things at the right size at the right distance. Okay, so that's our bead in the correct position and the correct diameter. And now we're going to get your crazy beading tool to have a go.
Yes.
Is that good to do the bead now? It doesn't matter reducing these?
I would do that last.
You would do it last? Okay. Okay, well, I will blend this down and take the tenon in, and then we'll leave you the bead to do at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can move the string across like that. Try not to have that fly right off. And then... So the tenon doesn't need to line up with where the post meets the bead, does it? Because you're not going to see it. So how thin do we want to be there? That is a thing. So
I wouldn't go any less than 3/4.
Do you want to set me 3/4 on that?
Yeah, of course. Whoa.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I'm keeping an eye on my widest bit and thinking I want a convex curve to then blend concave into kind of straight where it meets the bead. So what signs are we thinking? Did you set it? Great. So I've got a long way to go yet with that. So that's more like it. So keeping an eye on where my centre is, I want to blend the convex. And we'll start taking a little bit more of a note of how thick this is. Just give ourselves perfect. Okay, so I'm two sides, but I can see that it's not quite smooth into there. I do my best to smoothen it a little bit. How's the widest point looking? What do you reckon, Robin?
Good looking bit of turning.
Thought you were going to get me a sharper skew chisel. Oh, too late now. Right. And then I need to do this side as well. So, and what size is the tenon? Are we sure we had the right size?
Yeah, this is a 3/8 tenon.
If you want to know when diggings happen, it's when you swap sides and your body's suddenly in the way. So it's a good time to be wary. Great, so you reckon 12 mil?
Yeah.
What did we say earlier?
9.
Oh, okay, yeah, I thought 9 was a bit small.
Difficult to turn.
So, yeah, I remember years ago trying to turn Clisset spindles for a frame chair, and I think they were possibly 7 mil.
Wow.
I was really struggling. Okay, so 12 mil. So I'm a way off that yet, aren't I?
Yeah.
So let's just get this tip in. So, do you know one of the things that actually I think is quite a good tip? Sorry. Some people might think that it's a bit silly and a waste of time kind of flipping it. But actually, it might be that you find it a lot easier to do it on the other end anyway. And it's a good way, instead of moving the string, like I'm having to do now, you just flip the bit of wood. So, am I just stalling because this is taking forever?
No.
Oh!
So close.
12 mil is so tiny.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm going to taper the end, and by eye I reckon that is 10.5 mil on the end.
11.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. Well done, you. So, if that is 12, about there.
Is this a good time to demonstrate a block with sandpaper on it?
Yeah, if you've got it.
A
Or
little flat bit of wood with a bit of sandpaper on, I'll do that.
yeah, go on then. Great. Okay, well, that I think is pretty much there. It's not perfect.
Very close.
But you've got another good tip.
Yes.
And I'm sweating, so I think I will hand over to you, Robin.
So if you've only got a tiny bit to take away from a tenon, just get a little flat piece of wood and a bit of sandpaper, hold it flat on the tenon.
I suppose it's particularly useful if you're not very confident with a skew chisel.
If you can't take away...
to make a nice flat, just to take a little whisper off.
Exactly, you can take point something millimetres away with that. Now you can do that with a skew chisel, but it's a skill, whereas that's just holding a piece of sandpaper and rubbing.
Great.
Nearly there. It's possibly a tiny little bit. I mean, this is 320 grit. You'd probably be better on something like 120, 180, wouldn't you?
240.
Yeah.
150.
We're using what we've got because it makes sense.
Perfect.
Look at that.
Happy
Lovely.
days.
Okay, so this tool is called a beading and parting tool. We're just going to show you that it's another way, another tool for turning a bead, which is slightly less likely to dig in on you.
I guess because it's squarer, maybe you get a slightly better, more natural curve from rolling it over.
Yeah. I think because this is in the middle, that's because you're pivoting right centrally underneath the blade, that's why it doesn't dig in. Now don't be afraid to leave a bit of a flat on this side of your bead, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean a tiny little flat, having a flat there is possibly slightly advantageous.
I would say so, yeah.
Just make sure that the top of the bead is an accurate distance from where the tenon's going in.
Yeah.
And of course there's always a bit of leeway when you're fitting it, so make sure you check out the videos on using the reamer to fit, and you'll see that as it's going together. So this is the crest post with a thinner tenon so that it can go into the crest.
Yep.
It needs to be quite long, so we've got about 2 inches on the end there. Mm-hmm. And then the arm post will be exactly the same, but a fatter tenon for a 16mm hole.
Yep.
And it doesn't need to be quite so long.
Yeah. One last tip. Where's that bit of sandpaper gone?
Got
There is
it.
absolutely no shame getting a little bit of sandpaper and finishing your bead off like that. I'm sure the green woodworking world is going to call me every name under the sun. Use the tool you are best with.
Beautiful.
Okay, one crest post.